What's going on, Pathways Church? I'm Jake Collins, your middle school pastor, and I'm excited to join you this week on Daily Dose. All this week, we're looking at the characteristics of David. We see these described in 1 Samuel 16:18, when our young hero is chosen to come and play music for King Saul. This description gives us a set of qualities that we can personally strive for as we seek to serve God in our own lives. So far this week, we've seen that David was skillful in music, a brave warrior, and prudent in speech. The fourth description of David in this passage is that he is a fine-looking man. That's how the NIV translates it. Other translations use the term good-looking or handsome. The King James Version calls him comely. I personally love the way that the ESV translates this idea. It calls David a man of good presence. To smooth this out, we might say that David presents himself well. Now, I know what some of you are already thinking. Isn't there another verse about David somewhere that says something about man looking at the outside, but God looking at the heart? Yes, and that verse is actually earlier in this same chapter. But again, think about the context. David is being called to work for the king. This is a big moment for him personally, and it is also a key step forward in this part of God's overall story. David, being a man of good presence, along with being a prudent speaker, is going to set him up well for the success that is coming his way. Don't get too caught up in specifics here. Think about steps that we take to represent ourselves well to those around us. When I was in preaching class in college, our professor talked to us about how to find success in pulpit supply. Pulpit supply is basically where you're called to preach for a time at a church without fully joining the staff. This might be for 1 week as a guest speaker, or for a few months when the church is in between pastors. He talked about how when he was starting out in ministry, he was never quite sure how to dress. He wasn't sure all the time whether the church that had called him to preach was more formal or more casual. He talked about how he developed a strategy. He would always wear a suit just in case the church was super formal. If he noticed things were more modern, he'd go back to the car, ditch the coat, ditch the tie, and open the top button. He never wanted his appearance to get in the way of what he was there to do, preach God's truth to the people. This reminds me of when Paul talks about becoming all things to all men in 1 Corinthians 9. We shouldn't get caught up in outward things to the point where we become vain or distracted from the mission of God, but we should think about how we represent ourselves to others, especially when we are trying to share the truth of Jesus with them. Tomorrow we're going to look at the single most important characteristic of David. Join me back here as we wrap up the week on Daily Dose.